Welcome back, everybody. It's Paul Maglev here with Train Mechanic Simulator 2017. I don't know how many times I've had to introduce myself in this recording session, but you're going to not have to see that because I'm going to probably cut it out. So, what is Train Mechanic Simulator, other than just basically being a game that basically explains itself? Well, we're going to be taking things apart, we're going to be putting things back together, we're going to be fixing things, and it's going to be... I feel like it's from the same developers as Car Mechanic Simulator 2014 or 2013 or some 2010 game or whatever. But that's beside the point. The point is we're going to hop right into this. We're going to go into our empty slots where we're going to start a new game. I have seen this game, I've experienced this game, but the previous recording sessions I wasn't quite satisfied with. So we're just going to go back from the ground up, and we are going to start this over again. So how do you play this game? Well, the first thing we're going to do is actually accept this job order. I didn't read the description, which is already the first problem. Description. It appears the cause of the locomotive's malfunction is a damaged carriage. Probably they are the steel and rubber springs. Locate the exact cause of the defect and replace it with a new part. Okay. So we got our job cut out for ourselves. We've got 3 different modes. Press the number 3 to actually go and test different parts to see if they're functioning properly. We're going to be testing the springs, for example. This spring's good. That's not good. This is also not good. So we're gonna have to go and mouse over to this side. This is the installation mode. It looks pretty normal, but we're gonna need that later because what we need to do is go to the removal or disassembly mode where we basically just bolt this off. And with the turn of the screw, we'll have these pieces taken out fairly quickly. I'm just wondering if there's something else that's also in trouble. Because this looks pretty rusty, and one of the indicators that you need to address something is that it's coated in rust, because they couldn't think of a better way to indicate when something was malfunctioning. So we'll just go and repair this up with a guaranteed level of 100% success. If your workbench isn't upgraded enough, there is the risk that you might break something even more, and nobody wants that. One thing I can tell you about this game is that although it's in full release on Steam, it just doesn't have that completely perfect polished feel to it. Like, it still feels like a diamond in the rough. I don't know how to explain it. Looks like everything's already repaired. So, now that we got that taken care of, we can just go to M, which shows our job order list, and we can just write off on it, and they'll be able to take this engine out of the shop. Unfortunately, you can't skip this. You actually have to see this entire cutscene in its entirety until the button to continue actually shows up. And we have to manually walk all the way back over here and do it all over again. Except this time it's with job order number 2. Complains of a faulty brake system. Locate the cause of the defects. This work order is slightly more difficult. Remember that each part type is repaired on a different workbench. If you're not able to repair the part yourself, you can buy a new part in the store using the tablets. And we'll certainly do that if we have to. However, we're going to try to avoid buying parts as best as we can. We're going to try to machine and repair all the equipment as best as we possibly can. I'd like to look at this, thank you. Okay. So it's kind of difficult to see some of the parts. And if you want to focus on something, you have to select the item you want to look at, and then press the F key. That was kind of difficult at first, especially considering if you try to look at something in the corner of your eye, it might not necessarily focus, at least in installation mode. In disassembly mode, it's pretty simple. So we'll just pull out this hydraulic brake hose. If it'll even... Oh, I'm still in installation mode. I want to remove this, thank you! And we're gonna take this hydraulic piston and take it out. And then we're going to take these brake shoes out. And this sleever as well. And we're going to scroll over here, because I already knew the other ones were pretty faulty looking. But we're going to double check this just to be sure. Yeah, I think we've got ourselves... I think everything's going to be fine over here. Just want to double check one last component. Do we have all the pieces? Brake caliper, arm, hydraulic brake piston. Yeah, I think we got all the parts, so we can just go over to the mechanics workbench and repair some of the mechanical bits. And then we'll go to the hydraulic table and be able to repair those as well. I really wanted to talk about what happened on the Memorial Day weekends because it was kind of nice to actually have time for myself. I spent a lot of time playing this game, realizing all of its faults and things that needed to be fixed, and I wrote them down so that I can actually communicate this over to the developers so that hopefully they can fix some of the glitches I stumbled across. I've played this long enough now that I can safely say that... What's the word I'm looking for? Can we go here, please? There we go. Gonna need to add one of those. Order it on up. But anyway, I'm gonna let them know at some point in time so that they can make the necessary repairs to the game, because in some respects this game can be very, very broken. Like, for example, when I mouse over to highlight something that already exists here in the installation mode, it's got a very brilliant highlight. But the highlights for places where I can install items is substantively less bright, making it more difficult to find. So when I do something like this, it's very hard to tell the tree from the forest. I know that's not the figure of speech in the original way it was meant to be intended, but it's important to take note that some of the things in this game are kind of counterintuitive. There's also a lot of grammar and spelling errors as well. I think it's because the developers are from... I have the strangest feeling they're from Europe, considering what I saw in the credits, like Swedish or Dutch or something? I don't know. But I think that's gonna do it. We're gonna see our checklist. Everything's checked off, so we should be good on this order, and we'll be able to send it right out. One of the things that would definitely improve this game, though, is that you should be able to experience all the music that's taking place in this workshop and the other workshops that we'll go to in the future, because we're going to go to an electric locomotive work shed, we're going to go to another engine shed exclusively tailored to steam locomotives, and a bunch of other things. It says that every single area has 25 levels, and we're gonna need to go out... Where does it say? Find the location of... the locomotive in square D1 and tow to the workshop. So if we're looking at the map here, we're going to need to be up here, and if my memorization skills are correct, it should be right about here on this slope. So we'll sound off, and we'll be on our merry way. An important thing to take note of, if you want to take control of the switches in this tiny little mini-map here, you have to use the left arrow key or the right arrow key or the WASD configuration. You want to do A and D, which would be the equivalent. And technically I can't derail even if I go beyond the speed limits, because they didn't program that into the physics engine. Because I don't know why. They were too busy on the textures. They should have worked more on the engine, to be quite honest. Gotta sound off at all these crossing gates. There's quite a few of them on this map. Oh, there's another one. I had to go and check the wiki article on it to see how to properly sound off. It's 2 short blasts for going forward from a complete stop. 1 single sound off that's short to go and test the brakes and the compressor for that. And then you do 3 short blasts to back up, if my memory is correct. And if Wikipedia wasn't lying to me this time. Because there's a lot of trolls on Wikipedia, which is why I never really trust them for really anything. I'd go and see what the federal regulations are, but they don't make it very obvious. At least in terms of, like, the rules and procedures in that respect. I'm not entirely sure why that's the case. The Department of Motor Vehicles gives a little pamphlet out telling you how to drive a car. Why don't they have that for other vehicles as well? We're gonna try to see if we can coast, and then we'll get the throttle back up again. That green halo means that we're really close, and if we get into it, we'll be able to hook up to the locomotive out there and take care of it. One of the things that always bothered me, though, is that when we're picking up the locomotive on the line, when it's broken down, which we'll do quite a substantive amount of, there's no series of cars adjacent to it. It's as if there was another maintenance crew that came before us and took care of the job partly for us. We can also change the camera perspective so we can look in the cabin. Sadly, we can't see behind us. We can only see to the side of us. And we're able to use the dynamic brake this way, or use the spacebar, or we can use this using the arrow keys, or... oh. Yeah, we need to keep backing up. Sorry about that. And I think the horn is right over here? Yeah, that's the horn right there. I thought it'd be some sort of a... That's not what I was looking for. But yeah, I thought it was going to be something a little bit different. Anyway. So that's pretty much the gist of this game, in about 20 minutes. And this is basically what this series is going to be if I continue making more episodes, because I did make quite a few episodes that I kiboshed, because I just didn't like them. It wasn't very appealing to me. I couldn't imagine it being appealing to my audience, so I thought I'd step it up a notch and actually get good. So I got better, and now it's time to actually see if things actually work out as I want them to. One thing we have to be extra careful, though, is over at one of the switches on this main line. We're gonna have to be extra careful, because although some of the switches are already configured in favor of our direct path straight back to the engine shop, there's still the inherent risk that some of them have been changed. And usually it's the one that I would least suspect. Usually the one that's closest to the engine shed itself. I think we need to step it up. I'm just hoping we're actually going in the right direction. I always have trouble trying to ascertain where I'm going. One thing that I think would definitely improve this game, though, is if Train Mechanic Simulator fulfilled the definition of a train itself, not just the locomotives for repair, but the actual cars that make an entire consist. Because it'd be nice to repair freight cars and your rolling stock, passenger cars, and other things. It would add a little bit more variety. I would certainly tell you that. Because we're just going to keep seeing the same textured locomotives for some time. The trajectory says that we're going straight, but we need to go the other way on the map. But the switch didn't indicate that, because it was a bit of a glitch on the parts of the developers. If you back into a switch sometimes, I've figured that out the hard way, that you need to follow the yellow line and not what the switches say in green. So yeah, let's just hop back to it, because we've got to go and fix this one up. Just as suspected, the problem proved to be the damaged transmission in the truck. Remove and replace them. Here's one of those weird, kind of semantic sort of nitpicky details I have to point out. It says in the description that we're taking the transmissions out of the truck, but here it says drive gear. And I think that kind of threw me off at first when I played this for the first time. But we're going to take those out, whatever they're called, because this game can't make up its mind. I'm going to take out this little tiny bit here, and we should be able to just take it over to this bench and work it out. I think it would be more immersive if instead of just sitting and watching a loading bar... Oh, I broke it. Do I have any funds to upgrade this bench? Yes, I do. If I've upgraded it enough, I won't have to... Oh, the chance of successfully repairing this is 15%. They're just gonna bank on that 15%. Nope. Completely failed. So we're gonna have to scrap those and buy another new pair. And usually I try to avoid buying new parts because it's more expensive than repairing. But if you wind up repairing something and it fails, which is always a possibility, you'll probably waste a lot more money that way by breaking something and then having to buy new stuff. But it's important to gamble on the risk of actually, instead of replacing the parts with new ones, actually repairing them, because in the long term you're able to save money if you're smart about it. Let's get over here, slip this bad boy back in, and slip this in. Okay. The other thing about this game is that not a lot of it's very logical or realistic, but at this point in time I really can't complain, because I certainly got my money's worth out of it in terms of the length of the game itself and the amount of material that's in it, even if it is redundant. So we can write off on that order and go on to the next one. I feel like I should probably break this up into different parts, but I feel like... Oh. The locomotive hasn't made it on time, so we're gonna have to go check that out. And I think we have enough time, because it's not gonna take too long to find it. But I can certainly tell you I'm going to be a little bit more nitpicky in the future on certain details that need to be addressed and fixed. Like the optimization of render distance, and to stop the camera from jumping whenever I look at the train and I happen to have the camera get lodged into a tree instead of clipping through it the way it's supposed to in a virtual game. should be able to coast around this turn, and then we'll be able to move forward again. I forgot to sound off, didn't I? But I'll see if I can give you an idea of what I'm talking about in terms of the camera jumping. Like that. Do it again. And again. Yeah, if you get the general idea, that needs to be fixed. I feel like I've memorized this game like I know the back of my hand. It's kind of weird now. And then we'll press the X key to activate the crane, which has its own control configuration up here, which is kind of complicated, but once you get familiar with it, you should be good to go. Even though the developers tried to get a sort of, how you say, a hyper-realistic look, I can't help but feel that the geometries of all the game assets combined with some of the logic behind them kind of just reminds me of a model train set. Are we able to hook up? Usually oh. We were a little bit off, so we'll just lower it down some more. Press the C button to hook up. And for some reason, this always happens to be very springy. I don't remember steel cables being so elastic. But it's okay because it's game logic. We don't question game logic until it actually becomes very impractical. But we should be able to extend out to here. Maybe we'll extend a bit more. No, we can't go further out with this crane, so we'll just slowly rotate it over onto the tracks. And we'll probably hit this little catenary pole right here, considering our positioning. Just lower it down a bit. Just lower it some more, and then it'll magnetize straight onto the tracks for the sake of simplicity. And we should be able to get back to the shop within no time whatsoever. I really wanted to talk about what had happened in my spare time on the Memorial Day weekend, but I never really quite got into that as eloquently as I wanted to. But long story short, we went over and saw some of the World War II fighter planes that come around to Moffett Field every year around this time. And we got to see the B-24 and the B-17, of course. As is tradition, because we always do that at some point. It's just a way of remembering my mom's dad. I never really got to see him because he was... I think he died in the 70s, so I never really knew him. At least directly. It's a long story, but suffice it to say, there's a lot of things that need to be... there's a lot of things that I need to explore and questions to have answered that I need to ask and inquire about to Ma. And going over to these kinds of places kind of helps out in a way, but it's not perfect. I could do a lot more. What else did I do on that weekend? Well, I was playing through this, trying to record some video footage for this series, which didn't quite satisfy me, of course. But was there something else that I did? I'm not entirely sure I did anything else that weekend. It appears the problem is the damaged engine mountings on both trucks. Engine mountings. Not entirely sure what they mean by that. Do they mean the damper of the axle boxes? Let's go test that hypothesis out. Still feel like this music's a little loud, so I'm gonna keep turning it down a bit. Is this what they mean by the dampers? Let me check again. Engine mountings. Engine mountings. Oh! Right! Engine mountings. These things, which are conspicuously rusty in the testing mode. If they're rusty in this mode, you know they're really bad, and you'll be able to highlight them, and it'll show up in red. This is probably also bad, so we'll have to go and take that off as well. We'll go back to uninstall mode to take the bolts off of this. Even though that's technically not going to make any physical sense whatsoever. And then we'll be able to mouse over here. We're gonna have to take off these little pieces off first before we get to the engine mountings. I wouldn't call them that, to be quite honest, though, but when it comes to that sort of vernacular, I'm not very familiar. I would think I would know better. But I guess I'm sorely mistaken. But I can't know everything. Though I certainly wish I did. I'm pretty sure I'd be an independent person who's able to live on their own house at the age of 24. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sounds really great, but as it currently stands, I'm in no position to do that sort of thing. Something about the cost of living in the Silicon Valley, and how each and every single house is like worth $1 million, even if it's only a fraction of the size of what you could get in other states in the Union. I've heard it's worse in other parts of the world, where the cost of land and property is just so immense that only a certain group of people can afford it. I think in places like Tokyo, for example, the cost of land is so great, the only thing you could ever hope to afford to rent out is a single micro-apartment, which is just a euphemism for a bento box with like a futon and maybe a shower if you're lucky. Maybe a little spot for a microwave and that sort of thing. Your PC. I guess that encourages people to go outside more, instead of sitting down and doing nothing all day. But I can't imagine in America where people live in conditions that are so tight-quartered that it just is borderline claustrophobic for some people. Because I've seen micro-apartments, at least from Google Images. I've never seen anything quite so small. But even that in the Silicon Valley might be too much. That's when there's the social paradigm of living in a quote-unquote land of plenty, and that we should be able to make as much usage of the resources we have as much as possible instead of conserving. I'm now really kind of fond of that mentality. It's kind of wasteful. And I know that's... in saying that, I'm a bit of a hypocrite, but let's just face the facts. There are some things that I could certainly do without. Back to, what I did last week. Other than wrapping this up, I started working on rearranging my room because it was in desperate need of it, because it was a complete and utter mess. if you're able to see it from the camera here, you'll see a lot of stuff's moved around. And I feel like I've been subconsciously doing this the entire time, without even so much as giving a thought to it. But yeah, that pretty much sums up the weekend, the week before that, and the weekends before that. I'm supposed to go to this Corgi convention in June. I think it's next week, but I'm not entirely certain. But I need to get back in touch with my friends so that we can get an idea of what to do. One of my friends in particular wanted to get, or should I say adopt a Corgi, because they haven't had a dog in the house for a while. And having another companion never really quite hurts, because they had accommodations for a dog previously. And they have a cat at the moment, but cats are introverts by nature. They aren't physiologically dependent on being around people. There. That should do it, and we'll be able to sign off on that one, and I think we should be able to wrap up this episode right here. I'll see you in the next one, and until then, take care, stay awesome, stay true to yourself, and remember to never give up. Bye everyone.